Welcome to the debate. So today we are talking about silver, but not just a small market shift. We are talking about something massive.
Right. It is a huge fundamental change.
Exactly. Imagine a giant, super secure vault. And this vault holds a huge chunk of the world's physical silver. Now, over the last few months, there is just this endless line of trucks pulling up to the loading dock.
Yeah, they are packing heavy silver bars into the back and just driving away.
Driving away at record speeds. The actual physical metal is disappearing. But at the exact same time, outside that vault, traders are printing millions of paper tickets.
And each ticket claims you own a silver bar.
Right. Even though we know many of those bars are already gone on those trucks. So that tension, the real metal leaving versus the giant pile of paper tickets stacking up, that is the core of our discussion today.
It really is a system stretched in two completely different directions. On one hand, you have banks aggressively taking real physical silver. And on the other, you have banks dumping millions of paper promises to try and stop the price from exploding.
Exactly. Now, before we jump into the central question, I want to make something very clear to our listeners. The incredible data analysis we are looking at today, the video that explains all of this, well, the video was created directly by you.
Yes, it is amazing work.
It really is. It is a brilliant design by Hoot.
That specific idea for Hoot provides a perfectly clear window into a very, very complicated financial situation. So thank you for making it.
Truly, it makes breaking this down so much easier. So, using that data, here is the big question for today. New strict banking rules are coming. They are forcing the market to clean up its act. Does this guarantee a smooth, natural price increase, like a stair-step rally?
Right.
I argue that yes. The data clearly shows banks are being forced to buy real silver. And because supply is so low, this will naturally create a healthy price rally.
And, well, my position is a bit different. I think the data in the video is totally accurate, but banks have private ways to settle their debts. So I argue we might not see that smooth price rally that everyone is expecting.
Okay, let us get into the numbers. When you look at the data in the design by Hoot, it shows a massive, undeniable shift. Between January and May, we saw 112 million ounces of silver move through the ComX delivery process.
And just to clarify for everyone, the ComX is basically the main public market where global buyers and sellers trade metals, right?
Yes, exactly. It is the big public store. Now, 112 million ounces is a huge amount of silver. But the really important detail is who actually took it.
Right. It was the U.S. legacy banks.
Yes. Those traditional U.S. banks absorbed 81% of that total volume. They took a massive long position.
Which just means they bought it to hold on to it.
Right. Taking a long position means you are not just flipping paper contracts for a quick buck. You are taking real ownership. They backed up their trucks to the vault. And they are doing this while the registered inventory is dropping fast.
The registered inventory being the actual silver sitting in the vault with a for sale sign on it.
Exactly. And that number is sitting near just 80 million ounces right now. So when you have major U.S. banks buying up that much volume from a vault that is quickly emptying out, I mean, the basic math tells us the price simply has to rise.
Look, I agree. The numbers are real. The drain on the vault is definitely happening. But you can't only look at the trucks driving away.
What do you mean?
Well, you have to look at the traders standing outside printing the paper tickets. While the U.S. banks were absorbing that 81%, the non-U.S. legacy banks did the exact opposite. They defended their level by leaking 82.8 million ounces in shorts.
Ah, the short sellers pushing back.
Exactly. Selling short means you are making a bet that the price will go down. Usually, you do this by selling a paper contract for silver that you promise to deliver later.
Even if you don't actually have it.
Right. The non-U.S. banks dumped 82.8 million ounces of these paper promises onto the market. To use your vault example, while the U.S. banks are emptying the real vault, the non-U.S. banks are flooding the street with fake tickets.
They're creating artificial supply.
Yes, because when the market sees all these new paper tickets, it thinks, oh, There is plenty of silver available, and that stops the price from rising. That heavy resistance tells me the banks will fight tooth and nail to prevent a smooth rally.
But that is the whole point of the new rules. That strategy of printing endless paper tickets, it is about to stop. They simply cannot keep doing it.
Because regulators are stepping in.
Yes. Have you looked at the specific mechanics of the upcoming Basel III regulations? We just call it Basel III.
I have, yeah. The banking regulators are getting much, much stricter about how much risk a bank is allowed to take on.
Stricter is almost an understatement. Under the old rules, a bank could sell a paper short promising to deliver silver they do not actually own, and it cost them basically nothing.
Right. We call that a naked short. Because they are totally exposed, they have no real metal to back up their promise.
Exactly. But the new Basel III rules, they apply a massive 85% risk weight to these naked paper shorts.
Which makes those bets incredibly expensive to keep.
Extremely expensive. The regulators want stability. So let's say a bank sells a paper contract for $1 million of silver they do not have. The new rule forces that bank to take $850,000 of their own actual cash and lock it away in a reserve account.
Wow.
Yeah, they can't use that cash to make loans, they can't use it to earn interest, it is just frozen. Suddenly, holding on to these fake silver promises drains the bank's available cash.
And if there is one thing banks hate, it is having their cash frozen. They need that money flowing to make a profit.
Right. So as we get closer to the deadline for their semi-annual reports, which is when they have to show regulators their books, these banks are highly motivated to clean up their mess. They have to erase those naked shorts.
They definitely can't leave them on the books. I agree with that.
And the only way to erase a short is to cover it. Traditionally, that means going out and buying the silver back. That forced buying is exactly what creates the upward price rally.
Okay, I completely agree that the 85% penalty forces them to clean up their books. But how they clean it up is where we really disagree.
How else would they do it?
Well, you're assuming they have to go out into the public ComX market and buy real silver to cover those shorts. If they did that, yes, the sudden massive demand would drive the price through the roof.
Right.
But the financial system has escape hatches. They can use OTC settlements.
Over-the-counter deals.
Yes. OTC deals are private, customized agreements made directly between two banks. It's like a private phone call instead of a public auction.
Okay, explain how that stops the price from going up.
Sure. Let us say Bank A owes Bank B 10 million ounces of silver on paper. Bank A knows they do not have the metal. And they know that buying it on the public market would cause a massive price spike.
Which would hurt them.
Exactly. So Bank A calls Bank B privately and says, look, I owe you this silver, but instead of making me go buy it, I will just wire you a massive amount of cash right now. Let's just tear up the contract.
Ah, a cash settlement instead of physical delivery.
You got it. Bank B takes the cash, they both tear up the paper tickets, and the debt is completely erased. Bank A has successfully covered its short position and cleaned up its books for the regulators.
But no silver actually moved.
Exactly. Notice what did not happen. No one went to the public market to buy silver. No real metal ever changed hands. The ComX price never moved. By using private cash settlements, the banks can fix their reports without creating that public buying panic.
Okay, I understand the mechanism of a cash settlement. It is a very common tool for banks, you are right. But I think you are ignoring the gravity of the physical shortage here.
How so?
Well, you can tear up all the paper contracts you want in private, but you cannot run a solar panel factory on paper silver. The industrial world needs the actual metal.
Industrial demand is certainly real, but we are talking about financial market manipulation here, not electronics.
But the two are totally connected. Let us go back to that 80 million ounce number for the registered inventory. That is the physical reality. Even if Bank A pays cash to Bank B to tear up a contract, that does not put a single new bar of silver back into the vault.
That is true. The vault is still emptying.
Right. The U.S. legacy banks, by absorbing 81% of those deliveries, are basically screaming, we want the physical metal before it is completely gone.
They are definitely securing their own supply. I won't argue that.
The entire structure of the market. Right now, because physical silver is getting so tight, buyers are desperate. They are willing to pay a premium to get their silver loaded onto a truck today rather than waiting a month.
Which causes backwardation.
Exactly. Backwardation is weird. It means the current price of silver is oddly higher than the future price. Normally, future prices are higher because you have to pay someone to store and insure the metal in a vault.
Right, that normal state is called contango. Contango is the healthy, resting state of a commodity market.
Right. And the market structure map in the idea for hotness really highlights this tension perfectly. As the banks are forced to stop their aggressive paper shorting because of the new Basel III rules, that artificial downward pressure lifts.
The fake apples stop flooding the market.
Exactly. The physical tightness takes over, and it ends that weird backwardation phase. The market shifts back to a healthy contango. And because the supply is so dangerously low, this shift creates a natural path for the price to rise steadily.
You are describing what the video calls a low-resistance stair-step rally.
Yes, it is low resistance because the heavy blanket of naked shorts is finally being removed by the regulators. With the fake weight gone and the vault nearly empty, the price naturally takes a step up.
Well, I have to challenge the idea that anything in this market will be low resistance. You're painting a picture of an easy, peaceful walk up a staircase.
It is just math, though.
But financial markets are aggressive, especially when billions of dollars are at risk. Remember those 82.8 million ounces of shorts that the non-US banks leaked into the market?
The artificial supply, yes.
Yes, they did not drop those shorts by accident. They dropped them to build a massive defensive wall. If the price of silver spikes too high, too fast, those banks lose huge amounts of money. So they have every incentive to manage this transition carefully.
But they still have to follow the Basel III rules. They cannot just ignore the 85% risk penalty.
They won't ignore it. I'm saying they will manage it through those private OTC cash settlements we just discussed. They will slowly, quietly bleed off the pressure in the background.
You think they can hide it all?
Yes. A shift to a healthy contango just means the panic of backwardation is over. It means the market structure is functioning normally again. But a functioning market does not automatically guarantee a massive public price rally. The banks will use every backdoor channel available to absorb the shock privately.
I am just not convinced that private channels can absorb a physical supply shock of this magnitude. Let us walk through the logic here.
Okay.
If a bank uses cash to cancel a silver contract, the party receiving the cash still does not have the silver they originally wanted.
Right.
If that party is an electronics manufacturer, they can't just take the cash and go home. They still have to go into the public market and buy the physical silver to build their products.
Well, that assumes the party on the other side of the contract is an industrial buyer. Often it is just another financial institution playing the price action. They just want the cash anyway.
Even so, the total pool of available metal is shrinking. The core idea for Hot centers around this exact physical drain. The ComX delivery numbers do not lie.
The 112 million ounces?
Yes. When 112 million ounces move through delivery in just a few months, and the remaining available inventory hovers near 80 million ounces, you are looking at a system running on fumes.
It is tight, I agree.
Private cash settlements might delay the reaction, but they cannot fix an empty vault.
They cannot fill the vault, true, but they can prevent a sudden price explosion. When people talk about a silver rally, they're usually hoping for a dramatic, overnight spike in the price.
Sure, a moonshot.
Right. My point is that the banks have the tools, like OTC cash settlements, to stretch that entire process out. They can smooth the curve so flat that the average 8th grade student or retail investor barely notices the upward movement. They want a controlled, slow burn, not an explosion.
But a controlled burn is still a burn. Even if they stretch it out, the direction is unequivocally up. The simple act of removing the naked shorts, removing their ability to instantly print millions of fake paper tickets, takes away their main weapon for pushing the price down.
It definitely disarms them a bit.
Exactly. When you take away the downward pressure, the natural gravity of physical demand takes over.
I think we have hit the fundamental divide in how we view this transition. You see the Basel III rules as a brick wall that stops the manipulation, forcing a clean, upward price movement based on physical reality.
Yes, because the physical reality always wins in the end. The paper market is just based on the physical metal, not the other way around.
And I see the Basel III rules as a new maze that the banks have to navigate. They won't crash into the wall. They will just use their private backdoor channels to walk around it.
Keeping the price boring.
Exactly, keeping the public price as boring and stable as possible while they fix their balance sheets in secret.
It is a fascinating standoff. We have the unstoppable force of physical industrial demand meeting the highly adaptable machinery of global finance. I think this is a perfect moment to step back and summarize our positions for the listeners. I can start.
Go ahead.
So, to summarize my position, the data clearly shows an unavoidable physical squeeze. Major U.S. banks are draining massive amounts of silver from a vault that is already running low. At the same time, new banking regulations are putting a huge financial penalty on naked shorting.
Right, the 85% rule.
Exactly. Because banks can no longer afford to dump fake paper tickets into the market to push the price down. They are forced to clean up their books. This combination of an empty vault and strict rules forces a natural, healthy upward rally for the price of silver.
And my summary is that while the market is certainly getting tighter and the rules are definitely changing, the financial system is built to protect itself.
Using the escape hatches.
Yes. Instead of buying physical silver on the open market and causing a massive price spike, these banks will use private OTC deals to settle their debts with cash. They will fix their regulatory reports quietly in the background, and because they can manage this crisis privately, we might not see the smooth, dramatic price rally that the math seems to promise.
The contrast between the public numbers and the private banking mechanics really is the key to understanding this whole market. We both really appreciate how clearly this tension was mapped out in the data we reviewed today.
Oh, absolutely. Seeing the exact volume of the U.S. legacy banks buying compared to the non-U.S. legacy banks shorting, it paints a very vivid picture of the battle happening right now. And again, a great design by Hut. Hut.
The true test will be watching how these institutions handle their semi-annual reports. The deadline forces action. Will we see the physical drain overpower the paper market, leading to a steady, visible climb in prices?
Or will the bank successfully manage the pressure through quiet cash settlements, keeping the public market calm while the vault just quietly empties out?
That is exactly what everyone should be watching. The difference between the paper price and the physical reality is where the whole story lives.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, we will leave it to the listener to look at the data, watch how the market transitions out of backwardation, and draw their own conclusions. Think back to that giant vault. The trucks are still pulling away with the metal, and the regulators are finally walking through the front door. The next few months will show us what happens when the paper tickets finally have to be counted. Thank you for listening.